Hey, you know what it is? Let's jump back into these juicy news with Tupac. We're about to keep you updated. Listen in.
And remember, Keefe, he incriminated himself in the memoirs, in his book, in the podcast. He incriminated his own son. He was saying, I was the mastermind behind it. He said that I was the guy that had these plans. I was the guy that set this up. I was the guy that did this. He thought he was untouchable, but that's not the case. He's not untouchable in these situations, especially with murder cases. Those murder cases, they stay around for your lifelong time. If they find out that you did that, then you're totally done for. And so it's interesting because now he's pleading that he's not guilty. Suge Knight doesn't want to snitch on him, but we all know that Suge Knight knows some extra stuff behind the scenes. He's starting to come to light, about Akon. He's coming to light about Keefe D. He's coming to light about Snoop Dogg. And, now these people are trying to shut down his podcast because he's trying to tell the truth. That's pretty interesting right there, because why are they trying to shut down his podcast when he's just trying to express his opinion? They shouldn't be afraid of his opinion. So the fact that his opinion is going out there and they're making these type of comments and they're afraid and they're trying to sue him for defamation and they're trying to act this type of way with him, it's kind of interesting. There's things going on behind the scenes. Well, we're going to keep you guys updated with these juicy news. Hit that like and subscribe. Let us know where you're from.
The autopsy stated that Tupac was the main person. He got hit up over 5 times. This what led feds and forensic scientists to believe that it came from up close and personal.
So talking about Tupac, and the recent events that occurred, looking at the news and whatnot and all the different channels, right now Tupac has been, he's been set up. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the story, because Keefe D was trying to plead that he's not guilty in the recent cases. But when you look at the story, how did Suge Knight pull up with the white Cadillac with him right beside him, right? He was injured in the accident, right? But how did he come unscathed? He wasn't killed, but Tupac was killed. I feel like Suge Knight played a part into Tupac's death, because he talks about saying that he did not play a part. He did not try to get Tupac killed. But how did they know Tupac was in the white Cadillac with Suge Knight that night? How did they know that he was, with him where he was at during that event? And if you look at my past videos, I even had that, Tupac was in the casino with him in the MGM Grand. He was, you look at Keefe D's group that was approaching Tupac and Suge Knight. They had an altercation in the casino. But shortly after, Suge Knight's in the white Cadillac with Tupac, and he gets shot up, right? He gets set up from the left-hand side of the window. Now, Suge Knight's on the right-hand side. Yeah, Suge Knight got injured that night, but Suge Knight did not die that night. And how did they know where Tupac was? How did they know what car he was in? How did they know he was in that white Cadillac with Suge Knight that night? And the street that they pulled up on him on the strip, how could they have known? Because there was no possible way that they could have known, because of the simple fact that Suge Knight gave out the location, he gave out the time, he gave out where they were going right after the MGM Grand when they exited. And if you look at Keefe D's son, Keefe D's son actually texted some people to go pull up on the left-hand side of the white Cadillac to shoot up Tupac. Shortly after, you look at Keefe D, he's making all these podcasts saying, he's untouchable. He's talking about he was the mastermind behind the plan. And I have my past videos where you could go look at that too in the link below. But it's crazy because, he had all those past people looking at his stories that he wrote in not just the podcast he talked about, but in his own book and his memoirs. And he was saying, he's untouchable. He was saying he was this mastermind. He was saying he did all this stuff behind the scenes. But it's kind of crazy because, now he's pleading he's not guilty. Suge Knight doesn't want to talk about the situation. He's saying, I'm not going to talk about shit, but that's kind of interesting right there. Why doesn't he want to talk about anything when, he had him set up in the altercation potentially? And he might incriminate himself if he does talk about things. But Suge had a stash box too, and a stash box of some, hidden things. But we'll talk about that more later in this video. But right now, Suge has, set him up where he's saying, "Oh, I'm not a part of the situation," but Dwayne Keefe D, when he went to court today about his trial, they were talking about the stash box, and they were asking him what was in the stash box, or what did he potentially have hidden in that? What did he do?
I want everybody to know one reason that they brought up the stash box. The stenographer, she caught Suge Knight saying, and you have to be mindful, if Keefe D's in court, Suge Knight is a witness. Suge Knight has to come on a writ to come to court to be able to basically sit there and testify that they were the ones that shot Tupac. No one else was a witness. All of the witnesses are gone. It's about 30 years past, and I want everybody to really be mindful and really look at what's really going on, because there's no way Suge Knight, he was in a wheelchair. Next thing you know he has health problems, and a lot of people sit back and look at it like Suge Knight kept smoking them big old cigars. This is why he was in a wheelchair. I want everybody to really pay attention to this, because it's a lot of people looking at Tupac brother like, man, how do you feel when you sit in that courtroom where Keefe D is right there getting testified against with Suge Knight? Suge Knight was the only one there. And I want everybody to know, he was the main one right there. He had a stash box. That was the stash box that he put the phone in.
The car that Tupac was in was auctioned off at the company. You got to understand that the people at the auction knew Tupac. They know Suge Knight. They actually part of Keefe D, P. Diddy's crew and everything. When they actually tried to sell the BMW that Tupac got hit up in with the window down and the stash box, it was because of the fact that the people who bought it were trying to make it so that the marshals, the investigators, don't actually find that driver's side door with the contraption hidden in it. Because one thing y'all gotta understand is, from the way that Tupac got hit up, it's gotta be something in that stash box that somebody hid away, man. And Suge Knight is the only person that knows exactly how that whole car works, because he's the one who was leasing and bought the car and everything like that. And so how do you know that the people didn't go to the auction to actually buy the car to make it so that they never go and look and find more shell casings, find more fingerprints? Somebody could have ran up to Tupac's car and actually did it right there. They tried to pull on the door handle. You didn't notice, but they tried to hit Tupac up earlier on the other side of the street, a couple blocks down. When they left that parking garage, they tried to do Tupac like they did Biggie. This is where they even got that whole idea from a year later. Suge Knight, he was the only person that was with Tupac, because Tupac wasn't actually trying to ride around with nobody else. Tupac did not trust any of the rappers or nobody from the streets. You got to remember, Tupac is from New York. He lived in LA. He knows the most dangerous areas. So how do you think that the people that end up with Tupac is only one guy? So that one guy, he's connected to Keefe D. He connected to P. Diddy. They really could have used $1 million from P. Diddy to buy the car that Tupac got hit up in. And the reason why they would even do that is because if y'all know anything about anything, the ballistics say that it came from an inward angle at 45 degrees. If you was to actually match that up with the stencil drawing that Greg Caden showed, it wouldn't have came out the same way, man, because the white Cadillac was behind Suge Knight. They wasn't actually even at the stoplight. They were a little bit behind him. So if they was to hit Tupac, they would have hit him from the shoulder, not from the front end. So one thing y'all got to understand, man, it's a whole nother way that it could have happened, man. A lot of people was actually looking at the fact that Tupac was set up, and they didn't know whether it was from a Snoop Dogg incident. They didn't know whether it was from a Suge Knight, a P. Diddy. If you really look at it, Tupac had enemies and people that had special interests from all angles, man, and they fired at him and everything. But the main reason why this whole thing is coming back into light is because of Keefe D. Keefe D was the one who, he said a whole lot of things, but you got to remember, Keefe D never talked about the car. Why did Keefe D not talk about the BMW? He never even said that. He said it was Suge's car. If it was Suge's car, then that means that Suge